Chord charts that match the multitrack are now available on loopcommunity.com. Even better, they will automatically match and follow your custom arrangements inside of Prime if you use the Music Stand app by Worship Tools. Every band member can use the Music Stand app, and their chord charts will stay in sync with the tracks. Buy chord charts individually for $1.99 or get unlimited access for only $12 a month. Head to loopcommunity.com to try it today.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Worship Fuel. My name is Matt McCoy. I'm the founder of loopcommunity.com and the host of the Worship Fuel show. And today I have a very special guest. I've got Corbin Phillips from Thrive Worship. We have a ton of songs on Loop Community and on CCLI for Thrive Worship. And they've got songs like 1,000 More, Coming Back. They've got a live album called Let's Have Church, and tons of other stuff. Some new music that recently dropped that we're going to talk about. I'm really excited about this conversation with Corbin. So let's go ahead and bring in Corbin Phillips from Thrive Worship. What's up, Corbin? Thanks for joining.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Yeah, good. Good to see you. So give us an introduction on just like, so you told me in the setup here that you're in California. Let's go back to just leading worship. Like, when did you start leading worship? How did that begin?
Yeah, man, it's been a journey. It's been a long, season to get here. So I am what I call a little bit of a church rat at our church. I've been there since I was 8 years old and just integrated in every aspect of the ministry since I was a kid. And I started serving with the production team actually when I was 13, 14 years old in high school. And ended up, I would bring my guitar on Sundays, and sometimes they'd let me play acoustic and BGV. And then one weekend I showed up and the worship leader wasn't there. And so the youth pastor goes, "Hey, did you bring your guitar today?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually I did. I always bring it." He's like, "Okay, good. You're leading worship." I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like right now? And so it's probably the story for a lot of people. But so I jumped up and started leading and ended up getting a little bit more involved from there. And then 12 years ago, something like that, got hired in our production department. I was mixing, doing lights, vacuuming stages, Windexing drum shields, and then started leading worship, started writing some songs. We ended up starting to have some conversations around what it would look like to release some of those songs under a name called Thrive Worship. And so we entered into that journey about 7 or 8 years ago, and that got us to where we are today.
Awesome. What's the name of your church?
Yeah, it's Bayside Church in Sacramento.
Okay. And have you been at that same church your whole life?
Been there my whole life. Yeah, since I was 8 years old. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good
Are any of your parents involved in ministry there? Or?
Yeah, my mom's been serving there ever since we went. So she's still ushers every single Sunday night, which is really fun.
That's cool, man. That's awesome that you've been at the same church for so long.
I think that's
a rare thing.
It's funny. I hear that a lot, and for me, I didn't know any different. Like, I'm just like, oh man, I thought everyone just kind of stayed at the church, but I understand why people hop around and do what they do. But I love our church, man. It's been awesome to be there. I've seen every season of it. I'm excited for the next season of it.
Yeah, that is amazing. Well done for sticking it out at one church.
Thanks.
Because I think you really do start seeing the fruit too by staying longer. There's people who know you've probably since you were 8 years old. Like, they know you so well, and you know them. You have real community there, which is pretty amazing. I think people don't stay at churches long enough to actually establish that community.
One of my
So,
favorite things is I run into somebody who attends the church. They've been attending for 20 years, and I'm just walking around the courtyard, and they go, "Oh man, it's so cool! You're doing so great! Like I remember when you were a kid, just
yeah,
serving around the church. It's like, oh, that's really crazy, that I've been here this long."
yeah, that's awesome, man. So Thrive Worship released an album this summer,
Yeah, yeah.
Praises and Prayers. Tell us about it.
Yeah, man, I'm so pumped on this project. So I'll just give you a little bit of background of how we got here. So 2020, 2021, a few of us were just praying, like, God, what do you want us to do? Like, what is this next season for Thrive? Even in our lives, like our families, we were just praying, like, God, what do you have for us? Which sounds trite, sounds cliche, but like we were genuinely chasing after like God's will in our life. And all
Mhm.
of us stumbled on the passage in Exodus 33 where you have Moses. Essentially, the Israelites are in the wilderness, and he says, I'm actually turning my back on you because you're stubborn and stiff-necked, and the only person he'll communicate to it with is Moses. So he
Yeah.
sends up the tent of meeting, and they start having conversation, and Moses gets down to this point where his intimate relationship with God is so close, that he starts asking him some really like bold questions. At least when I read the text, it seems bold to me. Um, but in that conversation, God says, like, okay, it's time to go to the promised land. And Moses' response is, well, if your spirit doesn't go before us, we're not going. And it's like, and he says it twice, actually. Like God says he's going to send his spirit before them, his presence before them. And he says again, no, like, hey, if you're not going, we're not going. And it really
Mhm.
made us have this conversation around, like, what are we doing, and where in our life are we not asking the presence to go before us, right?
Yeah.
Because it'd be easy we're very thankful we have some gifted songwriters, some gifted worship leaders that have been in our ecosystem over the years. But at the end of the day, we don't want to just write, create, and do ministry for ministry's sake. We want to go because the presence of God is leading us in that direction. And so we just, as a team, started praying, God, why don't you let your presence go before us so that we know which step to take next. And so, yeah, it was kind of this humble moment, like that we had to come before the cross and go like, God, we just want to follow your leading here. And so it led us to write this song called If You're Not With Me, which is just essentially that prayer, like, hey, if you're not with me, I don't want it. And that was kind of the Kickstarter for what became Praises and Prayers, because we have this line in the bridge. It says, I lay my praises and prayers down on the altar. And that particular line, it comes from Revelation 4 and Revelation 5, which simply you have Revelation 4, the heavenly beings are saying the famous passage, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. But then in Revelation 5, you have the elders bringing prayers of God's people, what says like incense to the Father. And it just really struck a chord with us that God is actually with us in those praise moments and in the moments where we're desperately crying out for him in prayer. And so we just felt, in light of those things, that we felt like God was speaking, that we
Mhm.
needed to write songs for that. And so we did.
That's awesome, man. So that is out, right?
That's out right now. Yep.
That's
You can get
totally
it
out. That's
everywhere.
amazing. All right, I get
Yep.
it. But we got the tracks, I'm sure, at Loop Community and charts at CCLI. You guys also just released Hark, your own
We
version of
did.
Hark the Herald is Sing, because 'tis the season. It's Christmas coming
Yes.
up. So
Yeah,
why
man.
did you guys decide to release Christmas music? Is this the first time, by the way, that you guys have done that?
It's not the first time, although it kind of feels like it, because we've got one or two under our belt before this. I think it was just last year. But man, our church does Christmas so big. It's like, it's crazy. Honestly, it's chaos. We have anywhere from 12 to 18 services every year.
Yeah.
Thousands of people come. My favorite thing is last year we had, a ton of people came, but we had a record setting 890 something salvations, which was just unbelievable.
Wow.
But really, what we've kind of set out to do, our founding pastor is a guy named Ray Johnston. He had this phrase that he used for years, that we're a church for people who don't like church, and Christmas exemplifies that for us. We set up a service where anybody can come. I have good friends
Mhm.
who they own businesses, and they will invite their entire staff. So it's cool. It's like almost a little bit of an outreach in addition to what you would see in a traditional candlelight Christmas service. But anyways, my point being, we do it big, and we have a lot of fun, and every year we come up with what's the new creative Christmas arrangement that we can use. And it's crazy. Like, even before we started releasing them, I would get around November 1st, I'd get about 500 to 1,000 emails within the Christmas season going like, I saw this on YouTube. You guys did this Christmas arrangement back then. Like, can we get the stems for that? We want to play it in our church. It was like, that's crazy that people
Yeah.
like are wanting to play what we do in church. But anyways, so we just decided, why don't we just put these out? Maybe there's something that this can be a resource for the church. Our whole heart, like honestly, one of the biggest things, my team almost gets annoyed with me because I say it all the time, but we just want to encourage and equip worshipers. And partly the way we do that is encouraging and equipping worship leaders whenever we can, because it's a community, right? Like that's what we're here to do, is to build each other
Yeah.
up. And so anyways, we released some Christmas music because we said there's a lot of people that would benefit from this that have been asking
Yeah.
for it. So why not give it to them?
Yeah, that's awesome. And that is so helpful because every church in the United States is looking for some sort of Christmas special or some song, something to do fresh
Yeah.
that's new. And honestly, any resources that worship leaders like you guys can share is so helpful for churches who, a lot of
Yeah.
churches too have like volunteer worship leaders who don't have the time
Yep.
to
Exactly.
be like coming up with some sort of creative, huge new arrangement that's
Totally.
brand new. And so they have to be able to get a resource from someone who maybe is, this is what they do week in, week out. So
Yeah.
thanks for doing that, man. That's awesome.
Oh man, we love it. It's so fun to be able to do
Yeah.
it and share it. And yeah, we're pumped.
Yeah. It makes a big difference. So how can worship leaders during this Christmas season make sure that they're selecting songs that are both meaningful and worshipful? Because I know that, you've got the people in your church who are like, okay, we've got to sing Silent Night, or they have very specific
Yeah.
worship songs. Got to sing Little Drummer Boy, or you got to sing
Yep.
these songs. But then how do you do it in a way where it really helps everybody without like actually really taking away from the worship time? How do you actually combine the two?
Man, that's such a good question. And honestly, something that we've even had as an internal conversation with our teams. We actually had this phrase we said for a while that we believe that all Christmas songs are worship songs and vice versa.
Yeah.
Because really, there should be no difference. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, we might not sing Joy to the World on Sunday morning in the middle of January or June or whatever, but
Yeah.
but the reality is it is a worship song. And so we've just tried to frame the way that we look at our Christmas services the same way that we would look at a weekend service in the middle of summer. Obviously, I told you before, we go a little bit more outreach on what we're doing with Christmas. So we change a few things, but the heart of what we do is truthfully to lead people into worship and ultimately to get people to commit their lives to Christ. And so we always have a worship song or two in our set in addition to the Christmas carols. It's funny. Last year we tried something really different, and it's one of the songs that's on this project. But sometimes it feels like testimony and story is something that can be extremely powerful within the context of life change. And so if you look at the way that Jesus taught, he taught in parables. I read a study that talked about at the DNA level, we're actually designed to receive information best through story. And so we wrote this song called What Christmas Really Is that we played in services last year. And it was unbelievable. We were kind of nervous because it's different for what you would play in church. But the impact that happened from it, it's a song that's all about the legacy of faith and the ripple effect of when someone chooses to follow Christ and they pass that on to their children and those children. So, but yeah, man, I think like for us, like we just have this goal of we want to see people meet Christ. And we get a really unique opportunity at Christmas to do that and to let them enter into the presence of God. And I honestly, that's all you have to do. The presence of God is so attractive. It's so captivating. And honestly, we're just doing our best to get out of the way and let him work in those services.
Yeah. So are you a worship leader at the church like every week? Do you lead every Sunday?
Yep.
Do you enjoy, because some worship leaders love Christmas season and some worship leaders are like, oh no, I'm totally dreading this. The songs are more complicated. They're like, we sing them once and that's it. Like, do you love Christmas, or are you like, we got to do it, it's a necessary?
So I can't remember who it was. Somebody just asked me to write an article on burnout at Christmas, just because I think, with how much we do and how long the Christmas season is, I thought or they thought maybe it'd be interesting for me to speak into. And so I said, for me, actually, just being really honest, I had many years where Christmas was a sour taste in my mouth. And truthfully, getting to the end of the year, like I would get to Christmas Eve and go, thank God that's over. Like rather
Yeah.
than going, how cool that was.
Right.
And it was funny when I first got married, and I wasn't super negative about it. It makes it sound like I was
Yeah.
like super down on Christmas. But when I first got married, my wife challenged me on it. She goes, look, I think you need to redeem Christmas like for yourself. And so we did practical things like going
Yeah.
after like, fun holiday things, or like
Yeah.
making hot chocolate, or doing, whatever, shopping around the mall and grabbing a
Yeah.
latte. But then it was like, hey, what about the perspective that you have towards what's happening at church? And so
Yeah.
it led me to this conversation of shifting that. And honestly, man, now I get pumped. Like I would say over the last like 6 years of my life, 5, 6 years of my life, I just get so excited because now my paradigm is looking at the people at the end of the service who raise their hand and go, I'm going to follow Christ. So yeah, man, I think, especially, I'm sure there's like worship leaders that will hear this. Like, I just want to encourage anybody that maybe does feel the weight of
Hmm.
Christmas, or that Christmas has a sour taste in their mouth, or the burnout of Christmas. Like, man, uh,
Yeah.
it's so important to keep the perspective that we're here on earth to help people see Christ. And so that has shifted
Mhm.
everything for me, and I've been very grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what should the approach that worship leaders take to picking songs for Christmas services be different than when they're choosing songs for a regular service? Like, is there a different, are you thinking
Yeah.
about like, okay, well, people are bringing their family members, we need to be changing the songs for that, or what do you think?
I think there's some wisdom in that. I think there's a couple thoughts that come to my mind immediately. Number one is you've got Paul, who very clearly says, "I'm going to be all things to all men." I don't think that means that you need to be a chameleon just to fit in with whatever the world's doing. But what I do think that means is that you do have to recognize that there's going to be a variety of people, a diversity of people who come into Christmas services,
Yeah.
and some of which only come maybe once a year. Some of which are probably there in a church for the first time. Maybe they made a wrong turn on the street and ended up in the parking lot, and it was so busy they couldn't get out. And so,
Yeah.
I think it is important to remember that this isn't going to be necessarily your Sunday morning weekend church attender. And so, there's wisdom to go like, okay, what is going to be something that again, thinking in outcomes, is going to give us the best opportunity
Yeah.
to present these people with the gospel, so that they can find themselves in the center of God's will by the end of the service. And
Hmm.
so, anyways, that
Yeah.
that would be my kind of more
Yeah.
philosophical approach for us. Like that plays out in going, let's play some carols that are maybe a little bit more upbeat,
Yeah.
let me a little more accessible, like Joy of the World. Like we have that one out. Hark, obviously, that we put out this year.
Yeah.
Things like that. But then also going like, man, last year the Speak Jesus was such a powerful song for not just our church, but across the world, right? And so we felt
Hmm.
like, man, what if we just sang that and allowed
Yeah.
people to have those words sung over them if they don't know it, And
Yeah.
so that would be my opinion is like, yeah, let's remember that this is going to be a different audience, and maybe it comes on a weekend.
It's such a unique opportunity we have to tell the story of
Yeah,
Christ,
dude.
which is an amazing story, and to tell the story about his birth. And I mean, this is the month to do it. And so
Yep.
I think if we look at it from that perspective of like, hey, this is the chance, typically, it's something that we probably should be talking about all year long, but this is like
100%.
the month where you can like really zero in on it. And it's awesome. It's a great opportunity. So what's your favorite Christmas song to lead
Oh, that's a
during?
really good question. Um, it's funny. So, somewhere along the line, within the years of us doing Christmas, I ended up being the one that sings Silent Night at the end of the service, which is the lights are off stage, like there's nobody looking at you. We're just literally, the pastors are out on the stage out in the audience, and they're got the candles up, and we're celebrating people who just got married or just had a kid this year, who just raised their hand and
Yep.
become a Christian. And so, but then we do a thing where it's actually really cool. He pulls his light down. He says, "Everybody cover your candle." And he goes, "This is what the world looks like when the light of Christ doesn't shine, when believers aren't sharing the gospel. And it can feel cold, it feel dark, it's depressing. But something the opposite happens when Christians do shine their light. Watch the atmosphere shift on the count of three, and he goes 1, 2, 3, lift up your candle. And it originally was very stressful for me because they'd go 1, 2, 3, and they'd be like, all right, you got to sing Silent Night as soon as we say three. But we're on click and we're trying to find the
Yep.
next available downbeat to come in. And so I missed it for a few years, and so it became really stressful. But then I ended up doing it every year and kind of got a groove of it. And now it's to the point where everyone's like, well, now Corbin's going to sing Silent Night. And it's become like absolutely my favorite because it's just, you get to kind of just start the chorus and everybody sings with you. You don't really have to
Yeah,
do
they
anything.
go for it.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. So yeah, it's fun.
One of my like major worship fail moments was I destroyed someone's Christmas Eve service by
Oh no.
I was leading worship, and I was supposed to lead Silent Night at the very end with the candlelight.
Yep.
You know, they all had their candles burning, and the
Yep.
piano player starts playing like the opening, notes of it, and I could not hear the key of the song for some
Oh
reason.
no.
And so I start singing it and in the totally wrong key.
Oh
And it was pretty
no.
obvious that it was the wrong key. So then I was like looking at the piano player, and then I was like, okay, let's start it again.
Yeah.
So again, they gave me the note, and I could not hear it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I start singing, and it's the wrong key again, literally not once, but twice.
Twice. Oh
And
my
everybody's
goodness.
standing there with like a burning candle looking at me like, you have just ruined our Christmas Eve service.
Oh my gosh. The
was
person that came for the first time, they're never coming back.
Yeah. It
Oh,
was
that's so funny, bro.
horrific, man.
Dude, I feel like so many people resonate with that because, like, how many times I know for me, I'm just thinking about all the times I've done that, and like even on
yeah.
this Silent Night thing that I'm talking about, like how many times I came in
know.
on the wrong beat, and oh yeah. Anyways, that's funny, man.
So, is there anything you want to just share with worship leaders, just in one final like sending, anything that like has just been on your heart recently for what you're seeing in church or what you're seeing
Yeah.
in the worship leader world? Anything you want to like just kind of impart to worship leaders?
Wow. Man, I'll tell you, maybe even just going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, just fostering stories of faithfulness in your church. And
Yeah.
one particular piece that I might give as some advice on that was given to me through a book I read called The Tale of Three Kings.
I've read that.
And
It's a great book.
dude, it's such a good book. And I think for people that are creative, people who are driven, people who have the gift of leadership, who are pastoral, there is a natural instinct that we all have to want to move forward quickly and to take new ground quickly. But I would say that I think I don't feel like I'm old, but I'm in my mid 30s now, and I got a few kids, and I think I'm very appreciative of the times that God didn't allow me to run when I wanted to. And if you go to that story, Tale of Three Kings, you've got the depiction of Saul, David, and Absalom, and specifically the relationship with David and Saul. And a line that struck me is that David would have become Saul had Saul not been beaten out of him. And I think it's really important to embrace pruning seasons rather than to run from them or try to fight them, because the scripture says, John 15 says that he prunes the fruit that is bearing fruit. He prunes the branches that are bearing fruit because he wants them to bear more fruit. And so sometimes I know this is true with my life. I look back on the things that God's allowed me to do, and it's so humbling, and I can't believe it. But I think about if he would have allowed me to do some of the things that I did even 10 years ago, I don't think I could have carried the weight, because he had to take me through pruning processes. He had to build up that endurance. He had to build up my faith and my strength. And I feel him doing that even as we're speaking right now. Like we're in seasons where God is going to prune us, and he's going to take us what feels like a step backwards so that we might go 3 steps forward. And so it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I just want to encourage anybody that's hearing that right now that feels stuck or feels like they're going backwards. Like, maybe you just need to embrace what God is actually doing to build some new fruit in you. We had a pastor actually this weekend that shared, I thought it was so brilliant. They're talking about their kids, and they were planting a garden, and they planted like cauliflower and broccoli and like vegetables like that. And the kids were like, "Oh, can't we plant anything that's like good?" And she's like, the thing that caught her about it was like, well, what in our lives are we like saying, God, like, why are you planting these things? I don't want these things. Like, these are not good.
Yeah.
These are not delicious, you know, like, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe those are the things we need to embrace. Maybe those are the things that God's asking you to embrace right now because he wants to build those foundational things that are going to make you the healthiest leader and the healthiest worship pastor that you possibly can be. So that's my
Yeah.
encouragement.
That's a good word, man. Thanks for joining us today. It was great meeting you, and appreciate your
Yeah,
heart.
man.
Thanks for what you're
Dude,
doing just
thank
to
you.
resource worship leaders and churches. It's awesome.
Dude,
It's
thank
great.
you. Same to you, man. You guys are crushing it. It's absolutely
Yeah.
amazing that we get to partner with you. So thank you.
Thanks, man. Yep. Blessings. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. All right, guys. Great interview with Corbin Phillips from Thrive Worship. Make sure you go check out their latest Christmas music, Hark, on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you listen to music. I'm sure it's there. We have all the tracks and charts at Loop Community, so go check that out. Also on CCLI Song Select, they're there as well. And make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for future interviews. Glad you joined us today. See you later.